Have you ever caught yourself treating your ADHD partner like a child? Maybe you're always reminding them of tasks or taking over responsibilities because it's just easier to do it myself, right? Maybe you feel like you've got to act like their parent in order to get things done. The problem is that doing this is actually causing more damage to the relationship and causing the relationship to break down even more. And this pattern is more common than you might think. These dynamics can turn a loving partnership into a frustrating power struggle. So in this video, we're going to look at the 3 main traps you can fall into with an ADHD partner, talk about why they're so harmful, and give you the strategies to start turning your relationship around. When you're trying to help an ADHD partner, it can come from a really good place, right? You want to support them and you want to help the relationship as well. The problem is it can be very easy to fall into 3 major traps when it comes to ADHD relationships. And these traps are so subtle that you might not even realize that you've fallen into them. But once you recognize them, you'll be amazed at how they've been quietly shaping your relationship dynamics. So the first trap is what we call the overhelping trap. When you're helping an ADHD partner, you might find yourself constantly stepping in to try to help manage your partner's life. And it can start innocently enough. You're just trying to help, right? But before you know it, you can start to orchestrate their entire day, getting them out of bed to reminding them of every little task that they need to do. I work with members of ADHD partners, and oftentimes they come to me and they're like, well, I couldn't get my partner out of the door in the mornings, for example. So I just started taking charge, laying out clothes or packing their lunch or setting multiple alarms. So all of this help can seem to work at first, but then over time you notice that your partner starts to become more and more reliant on you, right? And it can become exhausting. And this results in 2 major problems. One is that the ADHD partner can start to become more and more reliant on the other partner's help. But second of all, the partner helping can start to become exhausted from the constant micromanaging. So this overhelping can start to create a dangerous dependency. The ADHD can start to rely on you for things that they can manage themselves, and it kind of robs them of the chance to develop their own strategies. And let's be honest, it's not great for the helping partner either. The constant worry and anxiety about your partner's actions when you're not around can really start to become overwhelming. And this is where it gets really tricky. This overhelping can lead us straight into the second trap, which is what we call learned helplessness. And this is when your partner starts to subconsciously believe that they can't really function very well without you, without any sort of constant intervention. So your partner can subconsciously start to think to themselves, well, what's the point in even trying? I can't do it. I'm not capable of it. Someone else needs to do it for me. And this can happen in non-ADHD relationships as well. It's not specific to ADHD relationships. But if you think about it, imagine teaching a child to tie their shoelaces. If you always do it for them, they're not actually going to learn how to tie their shoelaces. By jumping in to help, you inadvertently teach your partner that they can't handle things on their own. And this is what we call learned helplessness. And this learned helplessness can be really disempowering for the ADHD. They can start to doubt their own abilities, and this can lead to frustration and resentment. And for the partner helping the ADHD, it can feel like they're carrying the weight of 2 people's responsibilities. So it becomes a lose-lose situation that can quickly drain the joy from the relationship. So subconsciously, it starts to teach the ADHD that they're not capable, even when they are. And this leads on to the third trap, which is what we call the parent trap. And this is not the Lindsay Lohan movie, although it may feel just as chaotic. But the parent trap occurs when the partner helping the ADHD adopts the role of the parent in the relationship. So think of it this way: when you're constantly reminding your partner of tasks, critiquing the way that they do things, expressing disappointment when they forget something, for example, this is where you assign yourself as the responsible adult and relegate your partner to the role of the irresponsible child. So by assigning yourself as a parent, you actually create the role of the child to your partner. Your tone becomes condescending. And this dynamic can trigger really defensive and defiant behavior in your ADHD partner. You're actively forcing your partner into a dynamic. So they can start to feel like they're constantly under scrutiny, leading to a breakdown in communication and ultimately a breakdown in trust. And this is a pattern that can spiral very, very quickly out of control. And it leaves both partners feeling frustrated and misunderstood, and both of them feeling disempowered. And as a partner, when we find ourselves in the role of a parent, we can often justify the reasoning behind it, thinking to ourselves, well, we have to do this. But ultimately, that belief is actually part of the toxic cycle. Because if we believe that this is the only way that things can be done, then ultimately we are actively creating a toxic cycle and creating a self-fulfilling prophecy. And again, this happens in non-ADHD relationships too. People can find themselves constantly nagging their partner about household chores. And then when their partner starts to resentment, they justify saying, well, I had to nag them. So these traps of overhelping, learned helplessness, and the parent trap can intertwine and reinforce each other. And this creates a really toxic cycle in the relationship. And it becomes a vicious cycle that leaves both partners feeling trapped and unhappy. And just before I move on to the next point, if you do want more videos like this, then feel free to subscribe to my channel for new videos every single week. So now that we've identified these traps within ADHD relationships, you might be wondering, how do I avoid falling into them? Well, it all starts with laying the right foundation. And the right foundation isn't built on blame or frustration. It's built on understanding and compassion. So the first step is always going to be the most difficult one. And this is recognizing your own role in breaking the cycle. So it's really easy to point fingers. But remember that any relationship cycle involves two people. So if you're trying to help an ADHD partner in the relationship, you have full control over your actions and your reactions. You're not just some passive observer in the relationship. You're an active participant. This involves recognizing your role in both creating and being able to undo this relationship dynamic. And this is really crucial to understand, but oftentimes it can be a hard pill to swallow at the same time. And I actually did a deep dive video into breaking the blame cycle in ADHD relationships, which I'll link to above and in the description down below. So one of the main ways to stop this blame cycle is not taking your partner's behavior personally. So when an ADHDer forgets an important date or leaves dirty dishes in the sink, it's not because they don't care about you. Their brain is just wired differently to yours. It's kind of like expecting someone with nearsightedness to read a faraway sign without glasses. It's not a lack of effort. It's a genuine difficulty. At the same time, it's important not to blame everything on ADHD. So yes, ADHD can play a role in the challenge, but ultimately if you're neurotypical, that also plays a role in the challenge. So the key is finding a balance between understanding and accountability. And this doesn't mean that you don't hold an ADHD partner accountable. It's all about how you hold them accountable. One trap that's really easy to fall into is what psychologists call the actor-observer bias. So the actor-observer bias is when we attribute our own actions to external situational factors, but other people's actions to their character. So for example, let's say you snap at your partner and you say, well, I snapped at my partner because they forgot to do XYZ and it's the 10th time. So you justify your actions to external circumstances. But when your partner snaps at you, you say, well, they just can't handle their emotions. So it's creating two different standards for you and your partner. Or as another example, if you forget to pick up milk, it's because you had a busy day, but if your partner forgets, it's because they're lazy or they're careless. So recognizing this bias can help you approach situations with much more empathy and less judgment. And by understanding these foundations, you're setting the stage for a healthier, more balanced relationship. Remember, it's not about changing your partner. It's about changing the environment in order to support both you and your partner. So obviously there's only so much detail that I can dive in a YouTube video. But if you do want a deeper dive into relationships, then join me on my free relationship bootcamp, where you'll learn the tools and skills that all of my successful members have used to build themselves a thriving relationship, ADHD relationships included. Click on the link in the description to reserve your spot today. Next is splitting strengths. So this is about recognizing that both you and your partner bring unique strengths to the table. So maybe you've noticed that your ADHD partner can hyper-focus on tasks that they're passionate about, or that they can come up with creative solutions to problems that you never even considered. These are just a few examples of strengths that can come with ADHD. But here's the catch. It can be easy to overlook these strengths, especially when you're caught up in the day-to-day challenges. As the partner of an ADHD, you can focus on your partner's flaws very, very easily. And this leads you to become blind to their strengths. So it's important to make sure that you're recognizing your partner's strengths. And at the same time, it's important to acknowledge that you have your own flaws as well. The more that you focus on your partner's flaws, the less you look at your own flaws, which ultimately results in taking less action on the relationship as a whole. Once you start to acknowledge these aspects of yourself, then you start to create a more balanced perspective of the relationship, and you start to think a bit more systematically on how to make the relationship work. And this balanced view starts to set the stage for being able to divide labor fairly and equitably. You know, a lot of people in relationships get caught up in this idea of equality in relationships, this whole idea of splitting everything exactly 50-50. But this is actually a myth, and this causes a lot more damage to relationships than people realize. So instead of having everything equal 50-50, it's about playing to each other's strengths. So maybe the ADHD partner takes charge of creative projects or handles the social planning, while you manage the bills and keep track of appointments. When you start splitting responsibilities based on strengths rather than expectations, it becomes a lot clearer how the relationship can be stronger. This then leads on to the most crucial part of ADHD relationships, which is building systems. But these aren't the soul-crushing, creativity-killing systems that, you might be imagining. Systems act as a relationship scaffolding. These are structures that support and strengthen your partnership. So systems aren't about controlling your partner or micromanaging anyone's life. They're just about creating a framework that allows both of you to thrive. So relationship systems are crucial for making an ADHD relationship work. ADHD relationships can feel like a string of bad outcomes, Whereas if you shift your focus to start thinking in systems, it actually becomes a lot more practical in how to cultivate this relationship. And I actually made a deep dive video into relationship systems, which I'll leave you with right here. I'll see you over there.